Hey,
Hey Darren, you all right?
I'm all right, sis. Are you okay?
I'm good, thanks. I'm good. How's your day been?
It's been all right. It's been quite productive. I tend to start the routine by waking up about 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, doing
Yeah.
some work, and at some point having an afternoon nap.
Yeah, you can do that now, isn't it? Working from home.
Honestly, there's nothing quite like a siesta, honestly.
Yeah. Hi, oh, lots of people joining. Hi, Dr. Muna, Maxine, Suzanne. Yeah, so I think if we give everyone a few minutes to join.
Sure, 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 sure. We'll give you a bit of context behind what we're talking about today, and
Yeah.
how the forthcoming weeks are going to the format's going to it's going to take really as well. Do you know
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
I mean? Very excited about this.
We
Oh
got the
my
same
days.
hairstyle.
Honestly,
We got the same hairstyle.
honestly, listen. I was
Yes,
there.
we did
I'm busy now.
media,
I'm busy
Malika.
preparing the environment because when you're doing a live like videos and stuff, there's been all sorts of jokes going out. On in terms of people.
Nathaniel.
Yeah, yeah. With like kids popping in and spoiling the video and saying something that just kind of embarrasses you and that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
something key we got to do.
yeah. Wicked.
Honestly.
Now this is my first time on live, so people just have to bear with me. I don't know how to do the waving. Like I keep seeing waves coming through, but I don't know how to wave
Can,
on you.
can you see the comments?
Yeah, I can see the comments.
But I think does it not give you the option to tap the screen and wave and say hey?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what I've pressed now, but something else has come up. Oh yeah, it's gone now. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. So yeah, what you're just saying about like creating that space just to have these live conversations. Obviously, it's been really difficult for lots of people now trying to do private work from home
Yes,
because obviously you got a household full of people having certain conversations. Sometimes it's just not doable within the home environment.
absolutely. Especially in the work that we're doing as well. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
and then
definitely.
there's also that with us for battling with guilt when we should be maybe giving our attention to the people that we live with sometimes. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? So it's
yeah.
a challenge.
Take this cardigan off because it's a bit
A
hot as
bit
well.
warm, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. It's been a nice day.
Yeah.
So we've
Oh,
got
you're
20
breaking up.
people here. Got 20 people here now. That's really, really good. Thank you so much for everybody that has joined the chat. And I hope that you find this useful or can take something from what we're about to talk about this evening. And thank you to Epiphany People for inviting me onto your platform. I think it's really inspirational when we see men wanting to get involved and talk about this topic because it's something we don't see enough of.
Absolutely. I feel as a father of five boys, yeah, it's my duty. It's
Yeah,
my duty. Do you know what I mean? And role modeling, I believe, plays a large part. But we'll get into that a bit later on.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, so yeah, when I don't know,
Whenever you're ready.
are you
All
ready?
right then. So yeah, it's one of them things. It's about 8 o'clock. It's probably a quite an awkward time as well for people joining on. So we're just going to continue with the conversation. I think, Nate.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of this is going to be a regular slot by the looks of things.
Mm-hmm.
It probably wasn't intended to, for be openly and honest about it, but in this regular slot, it's going to take sort of the format of what we grew up as like old school reasoning. Yeah, where
Mm-hmm.
we talk intellectually and reflect and critically analyze some of the things that are affecting us in our community.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah.
So this is that space, and all being well, hopefully there's no technical hitches. I should be able to load up this live on
Mm-hmm.
on other platforms as well soon. So yeah, that's pretty much it. But first and foremost, um, yeah, um, looking at the topic title now, in the poster, I did do a bit of a typo. So domestic I put down domestic violence and peer abuse. Now that was wrong. That was
Mm-hmm.
wrong. That was very limiting. because that's not what we're going to be talking about today. Actually, we're going to be talking about domestic abuse,
Yeah.
and the complexities of domestic abuse,
Yeah.
and peer on peer abuse, all right,
Yeah.
and how
Yeah.
it impacts and plays out and is represented within our community.
Mm. And thank you for highlighting that, because I think many of us, when we talk about domestic abuse, we still refer to it as domestic violence because traditionally, historically, that's how it's been known. However, like you just said, it's very limiting, because when we think of domestic violence, we think of physical acts of violence, and there's so many more things that make up like domestic abuse, such as the emotional abuse and controlling coercive behaviour. So I think it's really important moving forward that we try and stick to the word abuse as opposed to violence, unless we're specifically talking about a physically violent situation.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, how about you telling us who you are?
Okay, so well, yeah, as you already know, and probably a few others know, but for those that don't know, on the chat, my name's Naomi Donald. I am a youth mentor. I'm a domestic abuse activist, and I would class myself as a professional lived experience practitioner. So I've done, you know, the academic studies to go with my learning that I've learned from a lived experience, because I think that obviously lived experience, yes, it's important, but then we need the academia to learn how to apply the theory to the practice and understand like really reasons why people's behaviour might turn out certain ways. But yeah, other than that, in my spare time, I like to write poetry. So I write quite a few poems around domestic abuse and my experiences, as well as experiences of others. And yeah, I think that's round about me in a nutshell. I'm also a pioneer for Safe Lives. And for those that don't know, Safe Lives are a nationwide domestic abuse charity. And if you head over to their website, they've got so much information on there for professionals, survivors, and you know anybody that wants to learn more and know more or understand domestic abuse and its in its context.
Yes,
Yeah.
and you know what? Um, I love the way that you mentioned how you know you've been quite on a journey before getting to this stage, because this video does this live and us presenting ourselves online in this capacity does involve a level of vulnerability, and
Yeah.
we've been working together with our team at the Bless Centre on understanding the power of vulnerability, and
Yeah.
and and how to properly contextualize our lived experiences without us being used.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, why is it you do this work?
Okay, so for me, why I do this work or how I got into this work is it started obviously with the lived experience, experiencing an abusive relationship. I first entered the relationship age 13 and I left age 23. And I just found like, you know, going through that whole experience, it was very lonely. I didn't feel like I could really connect with any services that were already out there. And I mean, we're going back like 17, 18 years when I had my experience. But it's like over the last 17, 18 years, whilst I've been on my journey to healing, I've also been looking at what services are out there for women and girls that are experiencing domestic abuse now. And it became more and more apparent to me, although services, there are many more services widely available, but the same thing keeps coming up in terms of Black women, especially Black women from Caribbean backgrounds, are not accessing services. And I started to question why that is. Looked at some of the services I'd accessed throughout my life, and started thinking about, you know, like the cultural element of it. Like, was that service right for me? Like, because I don't think that they really understood certain elements of me then that make up me. So yeah, it just got me thinking, like, you know, I want to do something and go back and help girls from my old community, because there wasn't really, you know, much help for me back then, and I'm assuming that you know, it's pretty much the same for them now. So yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's about pretty much about your journey and stuff. And you know, while you're here, before we start getting into it, tell us a bit about your organization.
Okay, so my organisation, PODS, again, it stands for Protect Our Daughters and Sons, and the concept behind PODS is to protect our daughters and sons from all forms of abuse, youth violence, you know, low mental health. It's all of those things encapsulated. So with PODS, the idea for our project was to run some workshops starting with girls based on like self-love and empowerment, and really give them the tools to be able to deal with certain adversities and traumas that are possibly going to come up within their lifetimes. So it's not like to say the project is just aimed at children or young people who have experienced abuse, or you know, have abuse going on within their family homes. It's really for all young people to get that education instilled in them early, so they can make more informed choices and better decisions in the future when they're in relationships, as well as help out their friends. Like, you know, if you've got that knowledge and information about what abuse is, what it looks like, you're more educated to be able to help your friend who might be in that situation.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. And it's almost like you know, counteracting that culture of abuse, that sort of which we're going to get into a bit later on. But that sounds like really excellent work, and I know you know, it's very purposeful for you. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Um, all right then. So we're gonna move on to like what definition, what is domestic abuse?
So domestic abuse by the government, it's you know, defined as any incident, and so that's any, I think this word's very important, any incident of controlling, coercive behavior or threatening behavior or violence or abuse between those aged 16 or over. And that can be from intimate partners, so those in relationships, family members, and that's regardless of gender or sexuality. And you know, the definition for abuse, it changed a few years back. I think it was 2012, to include those from age 16, where before that it was to include those age 18 and over. But they brought the age down when they recognized that statistics showed more girls in the age 16 to 24 category had reported experiencing domestic abuse in a relationship. So they brought that age down. So that's great for those 16 and over and adults. But as you said, like, we're going to talk about things later on in this live in relation to peer-to-peer abuse. And so for me, peer-to-peer abuse in teens peer-to-peer abuse in teenagers is looking at the, I suppose, the domestic abuse that takes place before age 16. So it's before you've moved out into your own house, before you've got your own family. You know, you're going to school with this individual or meeting this individual in the community and experiencing some form of abuse, and they're likely to be the same or similar age category to you. So, and again, going back to what you said at the beginning, this is why we use the term domestic abuse rather than domestic violence, because it includes that controlling, coercive and threatening behaviour, which, you know, you don't have to wait until somebody actually physically attacks you for you to be able to report abuse. And I think that needs to be made clear with people. It's not always physical violence, that emotional abuse and trauma can be sometimes worse than the physical.
Absolutely, because it's always longer lasting, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah. And then I suppose bringing it into today's climate, obviously we're on lockdown now, and I'm sure everybody's seen, you know, various newspaper reports, media reports talking about the rise in women that are accessing services such as refuge or women's aid whilst on lockdown.
hmm
And I just want to highlight, whilst this is true, there are some organisations, like especially those that work with women who are experiencing so-called honour-based violence or abuse, who have seen a reduction in calls. So the assumption is that these women are at home with the perpetrator all day and all night and getting very, very little time to themselves to be able to even access help. So since the start of this lockdown, like, you know, in the first 4 weeks, we've seen killings of murders of women, which is known as femicide, double.
Wow.
Double, yeah. So it used to be like 2 women a week on average die from domestic abuse, and over 4 weeks they counted 13 women and 4 children who had died at the hands of a perpetrator. And it's kind of like, you know, it's really worrying. It's really worrying. But then again, I want to highlight and echo what Suzanne Skeet, who is the CEO of Safe Lives, I was reading an article in The Guardian earlier, and she had made a comment just saying, like, you know, we need to remember that the rise in these killings doesn't mean that these people that are the perpetrators, it doesn't mean that they've just, like, you know, they've just decided to be this way inclined. They were always abusive, they were always controlling, you know, before lockdown. It's just that the lockdown has presented us with additional triggers and barriers, and, you know, put people in really difficult situations.
Wow. And you know what? It was the fear. You know, for a lot of people about this lockdown, the massive impact. There's levels of grief and loss that's kind of takes place because we've been on lockdown. Um,
Yeah.
and you know, some of the coping strategies that both victim and perpetrator may have been able to exercise have not been able to exercise. I'm not excusing anything. I want you to understand that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
this is it's just further compounded by a lot more time together and further pressures that are happening as you know as we are. But
There's no respite. And then when we add on to those statistics, yeah, like, you know, that's like what, 13, that's 13 women in four weeks, yeah. And then don't forget, we have 3 women a week that supposedly commit suicide due to domestic abuse. So
wow.
if you put that into 4 weeks, that would make about around 15. So that's nearly 30 people we're going to lose over 4 weeks to domestic abuse. But it's still kind of something that, like, you know, I think needs to be brought into the forefront. I think, you know, more money needs to go into it. We've had, what, 2 million pledged from the government, great. But, you
Yes.
know, so much more needs to go into it. And these statistics and women need to be recognised. They need to be recognized to make changes.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So you know, you've given us some stats that really kind of hit people. To be fair, it was bad enough before, but you know, it's further compounded again, like I says, with what's happening at the moment. But
Yeah.
you know, what can you do to help? What can we do? What can you do to help yourself or family member or friend?
Well, I think before we go there, if we
Hmm.
like delve deeper into like the statistics, obviously we're
Well,
talking about, like, you know, like 15 women every 4 weeks and possibly committing suicide to domestic abuse. And, you know, these are real statistics. But then when we look further into the stats, like, you know, we already know that Black women are least likely to access services for help when they're experiencing domestic abuse. Yeah.
yeah,
So it's kind of like, you know, with all these reports talking about the increase in calls to places like refuge and women's aid, we haven't got access to the ethnicities of these callers to know how many Black and minority ethnic women are actually reaching out for help. Do you know what I mean? And
yeah,
then when we delve into that further, I've read some research that suggests Black and Asian women are more likely to die from homicide within these domestic abusive relationships.
wow,
So, you know, I haven't got the ethnicities of the women who have recently died, but I'd be interested to see. I'd really like to look into that further to
yeah.
break down, like, you know, exactly like what that is. So, yeah, I think I just want to make that clear as well.
No, no, thank you, thank you.
Mhm.
So you know what I mean. You've given us some stats, and is it how different is that to like compared to other countries like the States, for example, and you know,
Well, in America, have got lots more research based on like Black families, Hispanic families, like, you know, in relation to domestic abuse. So their stats are showing, I think it's like one in three Black women would have experienced some form of sexual violence within a domestic abusive relationship.
wow,
Do you know what I mean? And that's in America. I don't think there's been enough research done within the UK around Black women and girls in terms of their experiences with, you know, sexual abuse or sexual violence within abusive relationships. So it will be interesting to
and
find out.
and I can imagine, you know, it would be more difficult because one, the climate has to be set in terms of researching how these issues affect our community.
Mm.
So again, it will have to be the right researcher from the right organisation with with the right values and ethics
Yeah,
cleared to be able to find out this information. But ultimately,
exactly.
but ultimately, do you think that's going to be easy, or would you say that many of the victims of domestic abuse are invisible victims?
Well, yeah, I often describe many, especially black women and girls, as invisible because we're invisible in services, we're invisible in statistics. For
Hmm.
example, the Office for National Statistics last year, their data on domestic abusive incidents showed that more mixed race women reported domestic abuse than any other ethnicity.
Okay.
So more than the white ethnicity, more than black ethnicity, more than Asian ethnicity, and more than other, it was mixed race. However, when you read the note underneath, it does remind you that the sample that they use to collect this information might be from a certain area within the UK that doesn't reflect, obviously, the different types of ethnic makeup. And then the other reason, like we've mentioned, is you know, if they're not reporting these crimes or accessing these services, then they're not going to be included in statistics. But you and I both know that you can walk out into the community and have a conversation. If you were to line up 10 women in front of you and ask them about their experiences with sexual assaults as a young girl or sexual violence within a relationship, I guarantee more than half of them women would come forward and speak about an experience.
It's true. It's very true.
Yeah, so I think, yeah, we definitely need more research. And the interesting thing about looking at the American research, there's a lot of research there that talks about, like, you know, there's this stereotype about angry black women, or like, you know, I've been quite aggressive more than once in my lifetime, like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's kind of like this label that has just stuck to us, and then it's almost like, I suppose, that self-fulfilling prophecy, where you become that label then because you believe that everybody, you know, everybody is going to see you as aggressive or see you as hard work, like, you know. So you're not going to be able to really articulate yourself to even get the help because you've already got your barrier up, thinking, all right, I'm coming to you to have a conversation, to ask you for help, and any little kickback from that individual could make me either shut all the way down, or do you know what I mean, or react in a certain way that could be perceived aggressive. So a lot of the research that I was reading was talking about the adultification
Mm.
of young black girls, where they're perceived to be more ladylike or more womanlike and can handle more compared to their white counterparts. And one of the lines that really stood out to me from one of the participants was, she said she believed, or she felt like, white tears were more valuable than black tears.
Wow.
And yeah, that was a line that stuck with me, you know, because then I started reflecting on my own life, and you know, you start thinking about that actually makes sense because, you know, historically we've always been, you know, we've always been seen to be able to be handling more than what really we can. Do you know what I mean? So that was deep.
It's really deep. It's really, you know,
Deep, and
you know what I mean. And we did say this session was going to be quite a heavy one, and we will have to take a couple of breathers and sort of process what's been said, because we're talking about how it affects us,
exactly,
our
exactly.
community, how it affects our families, and that's it. And we're not pretending to do anything else but
Exactly,
that. But
exactly.
you know what I mean. So wow, and you know, the adultification. What part would you say that? What part of youth culture would you say feeds into that?
Into that adult,
It,
adult
adultification.
of,
We don't
of
want
young
to.
women.
Yeah.
Wow, youth culture, wow. I mean, sorry, that's a massive one, because it's like, you know, we have conversations all the time about, like, you know, the lyrics to like music, like, and sorry, I'm not sure if it's because I'm getting old or just because I'm more aware now, but when I hear certain lyrics, you know, and it's just dirty, it's dirty, isn't it? It's like really, really dirty, really sexual, and it makes me really uncomfortable when I'm hearing like young girls, like especially those that are like, you know, related to me, like my nieces, 14, 15, and they have a song on, and I can hear the lyrics, and it's talking about like all these sexual acts, talking like a lot of boys talking about beating and deleting girls. And for those that don't know, that's basically like, you know, have sex with a girl and then, like, you know, don't speak to her again, or have sex with a girl and then pass it to my friend, like, you know, that's regular in the songs, like. And it's just it's worrying, but it's nothing new either. I want to say it's nothing new, because I grew up listening to you know, like R. Kelly. R. Kelly was one of my favorite artists, like back in the day, and I used to blast out his music in my room, and you know, like the lyrics, some of the, you know, just the titles of the songs, "Sex Me," like, you know, like, what are you talking about? And then obviously the scandal that's followed with R. Kelly, in terms of obviously this whole with him sexually exploiting and sexually abusing young women and young girls, like this is recently come out. However, had we have been aware of these issues back then, I think we would have kind of clocked onto it, like, you know, when he started going out with Aaliyah and she was only 16 and he was over 30.
And this is it. And I don't know about for you, because for me, that was my generation. You know what I mean. I make joke of it. I became a parent from the slow jam generation, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but ultimately, it did change the relationship I had with that music again, because the words were just not the same as a man. As a man, it was not the same, because what was his song? Nobody has to know any things I
Yeah.
want to do.
Keep it
Nobody
on the down
has to know.
low.
Yeah, yeah, keep it on the
Keep it on
down.
the down low. Nobody has to know.
And then what was it with Aaliyah? What was it? Age ain't nothing but a number. And
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And it was like, wow, that was really happening back then. And you know, it did change the relationship that we had. But then I think whenever these scandals sort of come out, it does kind of change that, because, you know, it was just the other day we were talking, innit? And you were telling me about that guy. What's his name now? Help me out. Help me out.
Solo 45.
45.
Solo 45.
Solo 45. So Solo 45, for those who don't know, he was a key member of Boy Better Know, BBK. Right, amazing tunes, brilliant tunes. The vibes was absolutely right. But back then, you know, it came out that, you know, he was involved, and you know, he recently got sentenced for, was it over 20 25?
I think it was 5 years. He got sentenced for 21 rapes
That's it.
against 4 young women. And Solo 45, I mean, like, you know, again, talking about men talking about this issue, like, obviously, you know, Boy Better Know, it's a big group, like, you know, You know, I'm not going to say they haven't, but I'm yet to see anyone make a clear statement denouncing Solo 45 from them. Like, you know, I've searched them up online. His pages are still active, but yeah, well, not allegedly because he's been convicted now, but he raped 4 women on different occasions, waterboarded them. And for those that don't know, that is a form of torture where an individual will put a cloth, a piece of material over your face and then pour water over it so that you've got the illusion of you feel like you're drowning.
Wow.
And I think, you know, looking further into that story, it's like, you know, you can see the traits of narcissism, how sex could have been used as power and control within those situations. And it's something that I think, yeah, we definitely need to talk about more. We need to make our young girls aware that, you know, this is real and it is happening, not to be so trusting and naive of people, especially when they've got that celebrity status. Because a few years before him, there was the case of the other grime artist, DVS, who was, what happened, he had locked up a girl in his house for 3 days. I think the girl was only 17. I'm not sure if they were in a relationship at the time, but he had beat her, raped her, sodomized her, burnt her with an iron. And the only way she got away was by running out into the road naked, and somebody saved her. And, you
Wow.
know, you gotta put yourself in that female's shoes to think how scared and how frightened must she have been to run outside, like, you know, naked without no inhibitions, like, you know what I mean, just to get help. And that's a sad reality. You know, those are the 2 cases that are known because they're in the media. But a lot of the work that I do sees me working with girls who are on the receiving end of these perpetrators.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? Malika made a very good point. I was just looking through the comments around that whole toxic masculinity stuff.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's crazy because you know what? The BBK songs were very hyper masculine. You know what I mean? If we consider about some of the songs, we need some more girls in here. You know what I mean? Too many man, many man. And then what's the other one? Feed them to the lions. Feed who to the lions? Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And it isn't. It probably is not. It probably really is not that. But when you hear some songs, and then when you hear when you hear what's happened, what the perpetrators have actually done, it kind of changes your relationship with the music. Can I really accept listening to that person if that's how their outlook is on,
Yeah.
you know, with women? Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah. And it's about us, you know, as a community, when we're aware of these things happening, whether it be somebody who has that celebrity status or somebody who's well known in the community, we can't ignore it anymore. Like, you know what I mean? We can't keep taking pictures with these sexual predators and putting them up on social media like, yeah, this is my brethren.
Mm,
Where, you know, in the talk that you and Craig did last week, obviously it was highlighted, and I know a few people in the community has highlighted the fact that, like, you know, as a community, everybody was quick to talk about a man's sexuality,
mm-hmm.
but they don't want to talk about these issues of domestic abuse when women are being murdered and raped and sexually assaulted. But you want to talk about somebody's sexuality, and for me, that's where, like, you know, the community, like, you know, we let ourselves down. We let ourselves down. And, you know, someone's asked the comment here. Sorry, I've only just realised the comment. You have to forgive me. It's my first time on this live. On point WN has asked, how would you recommend protecting girls from predators? And my recommendation, the only thing I can say is more education, because at the same time, like, you know, you can never really predict that you can protect somebody forever, because, you know, somebody's going to make their own choices at the end of the day. And we also need to take into account that a lot of these male perpetrators of abuse, and you know, they come in displaying behaviors like it's all love. Do you know what I mean? So they do the love bombing where it's treating you like a princess.
Mm,
Now, we're brought up on fairy tales where we're all just out here looking for love. So if that perpetrator comes and presents to us as Prince Charming, of course you're gonna go with it. And it's kind of like you very quickly then fall under that individual's control without you realizing it. So in terms of protecting your girls, yeah, it's just about more education. What Darren had mentioned earlier about be aware of that adultification of young girls. So, you know, don't make them be young women before they're young girls. Make them live their life as girls, and just make sure that they've got that safe space environment and that open forum to be able to have these conversations. There's a lot of the research that I've done with Safe Lives with young people. A lot of them have said that they would talk to their best friend first before they would speak to a youth worker or a teacher or social worker. It's going to be like their friend first. So
yeah, and you know what? And sometimes it works out that way, whereby they will tell a friend first, and then the friend may tell you as a parent. Do you know what I mean? That same friend will tell their parent, and that's how I know some situations do tend to come to light. Now, as a parent, what do you reckon? You know, we could do in terms of making sure that if our children were to come to any harm, that they come and find us.
what can we do as parents?
Yeah.
I think, like, you know, for me, being a parent, like, you know, I'm a mother of one. My daughter is now 20, and it is about kind of always bothering her because, you know, teenagers, they get to that stage where they come in from school, all right, mom, in their room, and then they're on their social media and, you know, chatting with their friends and stuff. But it's like, yeah, so I think like just having them conversations always bothering her, finding out who her friends are, finding out if she's in a relationship, and you know, just having those little talks with her, talks with your kids, just
Yeah.
about like the reality as well. Like, you know, all this sugarcoating and pretending that the world's nice, like it's got to stop. We've got to tell them the realities, because essentially that's the only reason why they're gonna. That's the only reason how they're gonna you know, have these conversations. Sorry, I'm trying to keep up with the comments, and because a few people have mentioned like about the boys, and I just want to say, obviously, like, you know, this is you know, we know that although domestic abuse is a gendered crime and it affects more females than males, we know that obviously males are experiencing it too. And in terms of the person asking about holding boys or sons accountable for their behaviour, you're absolutely right. There are groups out there such as Respect, or there's a Drive programme that is running in the West Midlands, and they're out there to work with perpetrators of domestic abuse, because ultimately for any real change to take place, you know, they have to change their behaviour as well. Like, do you know what I mean? For us to stop domestic abuse.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? I think this is a prime time. This is a prime time to use this lockdown, where we're spending more time with our kids to do a bit more of that programming. Maybe can, you know what some might say programming, but yeah,
Yeah,
programming of what our values are, yeah, and
exactly.
what we can accept, you know, as individuals, and you know, as young men, as young women.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's
That's
about,
Craig.
yes, Craig, yes. So yeah, absolutely. It's about that, using that time wisely to have those conversations. Because when I think back, going back how many years ago, let's call it 30 years ago, not trying to give
Mm-hmm.
an age, yeah. Um, the conversations alone were just simply birds and the bees, and that was it. Yeah, birds
Yeah,
and the bees. Listen, the list of conversations that we need to have with our children is a lot longer.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But then ultimately, you will know what the conversations are more if you have more of an awareness of what's going on out there in terms of youth culture. What are the things that are impacting our young people? Do you know what I mean? That are
yeah,
impacting our children. Then you'll be better placed to be able to do that. So that's another reason why we're using this platform and not Zoom and not
yeah,
other platforms, because it want it to be reachable, and to be teachable, it needs to be reachable. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Do you know what I mean? So again, I'm gonna still go back onto culture, because
yeah.
I'm gonna tell you something, right? So, oh, I like to tell stories. Yeah. So
Hi, yeah, Mason.
yeah,
Sorry.
I'm loving it. I'm loving it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So what was it now? Uh, River Island as a high street brand, right?
Okay.
They're 100% about the adultification of our young kids. All right. So I remember looking at some of the outfits because now we're doing twinning for the gram. Yeah, with our kids. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. We're you know we've got you got like mini heel shoes for the kids, little
Mm-hmm.
girls. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, no, that's too far. That's too
Mm-hmm.
far. And that's for like 3, 4 year olds to fit
Mm-hmm.
that size. Do you know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? And then so when we look at how fashion and how corporately how do you know what I mean, when we're talking about CSR, now for me corporate responsibility needs to extend further than money. So you guys are with the money, that means say you have the power, so it needs to extend more than the power because it's about your influence, and that's where your responsibility. Yeah.
So what you're saying is like shops like River Island then where they do River Island kids and a lot of their clothes mimic the clothes of adult women.
Yeah,
Yeah, like they should take some responsibility in terms of like what their role is in the adultification of young girls.
absolutely.
Yeah,
And I know it's
yeah,
not.
I agree.
You agree as well, because you know what? I remember, what was it, last year? I went to go and buy my niece, who was 10 at the time, a birthday present. So I went and bought her a birthday present, and I said, I'm gonna buy her something to wear. I went into JD, and I struggled. I struggled because everything was very adult like, yeah.
Yeah.
And she's coming into her own person, and she's developing. So it's like, no, I can't buy that. I don't agree with that. That's not right. The jumpers are way too high. Everything is way too tight, and
Mm,
she's just a little girl.
mm,
You know what I
mm,
mean? So I end
mm,
up, but I do laugh now. I was thinking about it, that I did end up buying her the longest black fit coat, which she
mm.
loved, thankfully, yeah. But I did. That's what I felt. So I must admit, it's a bit of a struggle. And I'm wondering if there's any other parents that kind of struggle with clothing for their kids.
Mm,
And you know, yes, Tina, you're right. They also started doing underwear, young underwear that are way
mm,
too young. Do you know what I mean?
mm,
It's
mm.
what does that do they need to be wearing adult underwear? Do they need to?
Yeah. Well, no, and I suppose this brings us on to like the feminist argument about like, obviously like, women, which I believe they should be able to wear whatever it is that they want to. That's not an invitation to be raped or sexually assaulted. However, I think the key in that is women, like, you know what I mean? Adults who can make decisions for themselves. I think when it comes to, young people, like, especially those under 16, I don't think that we should really be encouraging them to dress like, adult women, like, so especially like, when I see like the little 5 and 6 year olds, as you said earlier, in the heels and stuff, it does make me worry about you know what other people are thinking, like, like predators in our community who are looking at our looking at our young people. And then, like, it's kind of like there's been this I don't even want to call it a joke. It's not even a joke, but like, it's a joke in black families when they say, yeah man, no leave such and such with that uncle or that person, like, because everybody knows in the family that that person's a perpetrator, but like, they haven't dealt with it, like it's just been kept a secret.
Yeah, yeah, and it is that, and I can't even remember. I was watching a comedy, and what was it? It was, what's his name? Oh, the comedian from America, and he did make joke of it, but it was so truthful
Mm,
about that uncle, about that. And yes,
yeah.
there's plenty of perpetrators within the community, and it's just been allowed.
Mm.
It's, the culture has allowed for certain things to happen. Do you know
Mm.
what I mean?
And that's where we have to make the change. You get me? Like, we have to be that generation of change, and we have to teach our children, like, like the correct morals as to what is right and what is wrong. Like, do you know what I mean? I think a lot of us, we have this cognitive dissonance. Is that the right word? Like, where it's kind of like, certain people in the community know that these predators walk amongst us. However, they're still allowed. Like, I don't get it. But then somebody who's got a different sexuality to certain of the man, then they're not allowed, like, you know, and they're having consensual sex and consensual relationships with people. So yeah, just looking at some of the questions, I think Natural Secrets asked the question, how can we encourage our elders to open up about this topic, as there is still a lot of them struggling with their violent past and disclosing their past regarding this topic? And I think that's a really, really good question, and I wish that I had the answer for you. I wish that I had the answer for you, but I think doing things like this
is key,
is
and
key.
it is. And do you know what? It just wasn't the way things were done. We never sought help for anything.
Anything, yeah.
Cancer, we never sought anything. That generation didn't. So they were pretty much walking wounded. Do you know what I mean?
Mm, mm. Someone said, as a parent, it's very hard getting the balance between allowing your child to make the choice and freely protect. And I can agree with that, Naya management. Like, I have a real struggle, especially like with my nieces who, like, you know, when they go out, like, you know, they're looking at, they're wearing eyelashes, face full of makeup, and it's kind of like, you know, obviously I want them to still be them and
Yeah.
grow and, you know, make their own choices. But then I'm always saying to them, like, you know, tone it down a bit, because you've got the rest of your life. And, you know, when you reach 25, you're going to want to experiment with makeup and eyelashes and stuff. And if you've done it all before you're 16, that means by the time you're 25, you would have moved on to, or possibly moved on to, wanting surgery to alter your looks. Because now, like, do you know what I mean? You've already been going to school. You can't go to school without eyelashes, or can't go to school without nails. So that means by the time you leave school and your the image that you see of yourself is not even the real image of you. Because when you see yourself without those lashes, without that weave, or without them nails, you then start to see ugly, or what you perceive to be ugly, within the reflection, and think, like, you know, so it's about educating our girls that they're beautiful, naturally beautiful, as they are. You
And
know.
you know what? And that kind of backs up what Craig comments was about around looking for African centered approaches. So
Yeah.
where does this ideology of beauty really come from? Do you know,
Mm-hmm.
and what makes it led? Now, we spoke about this earlier, and you know, yes, there's been loads of jokes around lockdown, about the shops being shut and everything else. Everybody's going to start looking brought down and popped down, yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what? Seriously, it is something that that is impacting people.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we need to consider about you know, from a young, I know quite a few friends that have been promoting a lot more of the natural beauty and everything being more staged, and things shouldn't just become a natural rites of passage whereby, you
Okay.
know, you reach a certain age and just because your friends are doing it, and that's probably half of the battle that parents are probably battling with. Do you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Because that's probably sometimes where their kids may be becoming a bit more sneaky, and maybe doing this outside of the home. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's so much. There's so much.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so tell us what do you know, breaking it down again to, you know, in terms of peer and peer abuse, what does that involve?
Sorry, what was that, Darren?
In terms of peer on peer abuse, what does that involve?
Oh, okay, peer-to-peer abuse.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a wide topic, because obviously it covers, you know, children and young people. And I think from the research that I've read, one of the earliest cases that I was looking at was between children aged 6. And you know, I looked at that, and, you know, straight away you just think, well, that child must be getting sexually abused within their family environment, their home environment, or somewhere else, to have learned that behaviour at such a young age. My main focus is around the teenage age group, like the peer-to-peer abuse that exists, like, you know, from age 10 right up until 25, I suppose. And I think, yeah, like, again, the reason why I'm so passionate about it is because I feel like, you know, that's a type of relationship that I was in, because it was with one of my peers, you know what I mean? But then it's like, sorry, I just lost my train of thought, but of what I wanted to say.
That's fine. That's fine.
Let me
So
just, Yeah.
Yes, African-centered rites of passages, because unfortunately we're very much following a Western style of rites of passages. You know what I mean? Whereby, do you know what I mean? I think the thing that really opened up the window to a lot of this stuff is online. So in terms of what sorts of abuses and grooming can take place from within the home,
From
uh,
within.
from while our kids are on lockdown, shall I say?
Okay, so you've got like obviously everybody's attached to their mobile phone or their so they're accessing their social media mainly through mobile phone or tablets, laptops, but it's mainly through mobile phone. And I think when we look at it in terms of being in a controlling relationship, that person then may have access to, if it's a iPhone, may have access to your iCloud. So
Mm,
they're in your account, so they see all your messages. They could be like 2 miles away or 10 miles away, but they can see all your messages as and when they come. They have access to your social media passwords and accounts, so they can see all the activity that's taking place. Finding young people who are being pressured or to go out and meet the person they're in a relationship with, even though really they should be at home. Parents struggling to keep their children in the house because, it's kind of like if you've got a young person that is under the control of their partner, it can be very difficult then for that young person to kind of go back under the parents' control. Do you know what I mean? So it's like,
yeah.
you've got your parents there that are telling you you need to do A, B, and C. But for some reason, because you've been controlled and coerced, emotionally abused by this individual who we're going to call the perpetrator, you're not going to be able to go anywhere other than where that perpetrator tells you to go, because that's a level of control they will have over you.
Yeah, yeah. And what sort of impact does that have? What sort of lasting impact does that leave a young person with?
Well, I think, like I said earlier, with physical abuse, like, if you've got a broken arm or a black eye or something, like, you can be told by a doctor it's going to heal in 6 to 8 weeks, or you can see it healing on the skin. But the words that are used in emotional abuse, and words that are used to control and coerce someone can be so damaging. Like for me, I say it can take a lifetime to heal. Like, do you know what I mean? It's a lifelong journey, because those words really, they don't go away. I mean, it gets better with counseling, and like Craig's mentioned earlier about African centered approaches being used. I think I've found that really helpful.
Yes.
um just going off topic a little bit here, but recently has been honored to be a part of Joan Campbell's Restoring Queens program. So
Yes.
the late John Campbell, founder of Community Vision West Midlands, I found the Restoring Queens program really helpful, because it is that African-centered approach. It's a safe space environment for myself, along with other women, just to talk about our experiences, not just necessarily related to abusive relationships, just related to just us in general, life, growing, culture, all these things that have impacted and shaped how we behave today. And I
Yes.
think one of the things that I welcomed learning about was, the reasons why we spoke a little bit earlier about Black women accessing services. And it's like, when we look at the history between Black people and the police, like, with historic racism. You had the Lammy report, which identifies or clearly identifies the institutional racism that still exists. There's an organisation called Sister Space in London, looking at their research. They've found that, like, Black women don't feel like they're actually treated as victims when they go to the police. Do you know what I mean? And that feeds back into the American research, where Black women and girls don't feel as valued within services, because, like, they're not the picture perfect victim. Then, do you know what I mean, for these services, because they present differently.
So I want to ask you something actually. So, you know, if we saw, if there, you know, I can see there's quite a few practitioners on board and parents and stuff. So in terms of looking out for the signs of being in a domestic abusive relationship, yeah,
Yeah.
young people, what sort of behaviors, differences are there to, should we be looking out for?
I think all right then. It's hard, isn't it? Because sometimes it can be like so invisible, and like we established, like a lot of young people are spending more and more times on their own, on their phones, and it. But changes in behaviour, and it, like, you know, your child, like, you know, you've got a confident, outgoing child who's normally out, probably always out with their friends or always talking to their friends. You might notice that this confident, happy, smiling individual is no longer smiling as much, or, like, you know, spending more and more time on their own, like isolating themselves, because they've probably been told that they, you know, they need to isolate themselves, you know, in a roundabout way, probably been told that by the perpetrator that their family doesn't like them, and, you know, your mom doesn't like me, so you shouldn't talk to her, and all these little things feeding into them. And one that I found interesting, talking to some of the girls the other day, and one of the things, when I asked them the same question, what kind of signs would they look for in their friends, they said increased aggression.
Mm.
Yeah, increased aggression. And, you know, like, reflecting back on myself, I can say that was true for myself, in terms of, you know, I needed an outlet, so my behavior became more aggressive. So it's like, you know, when we relate that now to girls in school, I think it's black girls are 6 times more likely to be excluded from school than their white counterparts, and a lot of the reasons behind the exclusion will go down as verbal aggression or verbal assault. Like, do you know what I mean? And I think it's like, you know, we need to look at um, the reasons behind the behavior rather than looking at the behavior.
So, you know, when I'm thinking about this, it's kind of like how trauma sort of presents itself from within our children, particularly in particular black children. How does it look? What does it look like? Do you know what I mean? So you've mentioned around aggression.
Mm.
You know, somebody's also mentioned self-harm, overly
Mm-hmm.
sexualized behavior.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's about taking control.
Sexualized behavior. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's massive
It
impact.
is.
And do you know what? Because the damage is so long lasting, um, that's what makes it even more important, probably even more important than the birds and the bees conversation.
Yeah, because with that whole birds and the bees conversation, like, you know, I mean, at school, I remember having probably 1 or 2 lessons about it. I don't remember anything really being impactful and sticking. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like safe sex is one conversation, but then, like, relationships, like, is a whole nother conversation. And I mean, I know they said, like, you know, for 2020, you've got the new relationship, sex and education element of the curriculum within schools. However, from working in many schools, some of the PSHE lessons, like, you know, and this is coming from the kids, not my opinion, coming from the kids, some of the PSHE lessons, like, they find them repetitive, and focus mainly on youth violence, gangs, and selling drugs. They don't feel like there's enough around relationships and mental health. And I think it is really about schools drawing on those with that with the experience or the professional knowledge in those areas, to teach those subjects or to make those subjects more impactful, rather than trying to get, like, you know, the art teacher to do a quick session on peer-to-peer abuse in registration. Do you know what I mean? So
So, so 1 second, we have about 43 seconds left on this live. What I'm
okay.
going to do is I'm going to save this. Are you all right to come back, Naomi?
Yeah, yeah, okay,
Oh,
yeah, because yeah, there's a few things we haven't covered.
so many things, so many things. So guys, just bear with us, all right? And join us shortly. Okay.
Try and get some.
All right.
Okay, all right, thank you.
No worries. We're back.
How'd you get the wave up?
Right. Can you see a wait? Can you see a comment there? Can you see the comments and it gives you an
I can
option to
see the
wave?
comments.
But you don't get the option to wave, no?
Nah.
All right, must be because I'm in control, dreading control.
Mm, mm. Mm. Hi, Rachel. That's my G from Safe Lives,
Yeah,
Rachel.
lovely.
Yeah, you know, like whilst we're just waiting for everyone to join back, like just want to say like thank you again, like for setting up this platform. It's been really, really good,
Yeah, you're
really
welcome.
good.
Welcome. And you know, we talk a lot. We talk a lot about all sorts of stuff, and I think it's just about um, as lived experiencing practitioners. It's about us probably creating our own platforms because unfortunately the way other platforms and other organizations, newspaper, press and everything deal with us is not great. Yeah,
Mm,
I have no love for the Birmingham Mail. I've said
mm,
it. I've said it.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? So yeah, this is it. So
mm,
yeah, there's lots of topics to talk about still.
mm,
I,
mm.
I think we're still on 7 viewers at the moment.
Okay,
Yeah, but
okay.
I don't see no
Thank you, Malika.
problem.
Yeah. I think just to touch back on what did we just end on?
Uh,
Was
you
it
have,
we still talking about peer to peer?
yes, we were. Yeah,
Okay, yeah. So going back to the peer to peer abuse, why it's so important is because obviously it's happening every day within our schools, it's happening at parties, it happens at the shopping centre. It basically can happen anywhere, you know, anywhere. Now, I done a little poll on my WhatsApp a few weeks ago where I just put it on my status and said, how many how many of us remember getting teared down as girls, right? And the amount of people that message me back to talk about their experiences. And for those that don't know, tear down, it's like you know, I suppose back then we used to call it a game, innit? And it was like boys would chase down a girl and they'd all put their hands down her top or down her knickers, like, you know, everybody's trying to get grabs, so to speak.
yeah, yeah,
And you know, that was something I just remember seeing a lot, like, you know, when we were growing up. I seen it so much, and it was kind of like normalized, like nobody never got involved, nobody never came to help. And it's like what's worrying is these things are still happening now,
yeah.
still happening within our schools and within our playgrounds, like, you know, in all these places. And I don't think enough is being done about bringing it to the forefront. Do you know
Because
what I mean?
and you know what? I think there's a lot of us boys back then that would have, you know what I mean, if it was under today and the way they look at things now, that would have been a social services referral, that would have been a this, that would have been a, you know what I mean, you know, court. It could have been a lot of things chucked out of school, but that sort of stuff just never happened. So I suppose it further created a culture where, you know what, if the institution of the school kind of went silent and allowed it to happen, then where does that leave our girls when they're going out into the community?
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. And I suppose for those that probably don't know much on the topic, just to bring a few, I want to bring a few stories that I've been reading and researching just into the limelight. You know, and these are things that are happening regular, like, you know what I mean? Cases of 11-year-old girls who, you know, were repeatedly raped for a series of 8 months by boys aged 14 and 15. And these were boys that, you know, went to her school, boys that she knew from her local community, but she didn't even know that she was being raped or sexually assaulted until she had the education to know that it was wrong, and she was able to obviously get the help. Another example, a 16-year-old girl raped on a stairwell at school because she'd spoken about another boy out on social media. Do you know what I mean? And then there's cases of females as well who instigate the rape of other females by males. Do you know what I mean? And it all goes back to this power and control. Do you know what I mean? But it's kind of like difficult because then some of the girls that you know, that I work with have experienced some of these horrific things, and they found it really difficult to be able to report these crimes to the police, because it's like when they've gone to report them, they feel like, again, they don't fit that stereotype of what the ideal victim is supposed to look like, or how the ideal victim is supposed to behave. So it doesn't get documented in any statistics. So it just be the people that are directly working with that individual that will know that obviously this girl has disclosed certain things.
Wow, and again, it kind of goes back to those powerful words what you were saying earlier on about the price and the value in tears. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? As
yeah,
some people's tears are valued more than others. Do you
yeah.
know what I mean?
And then, because a lot of these girls, obviously, like they go through these traumatic, awful experiences, and then if they've got to go back to school, or back into the community the next day, and everybody knows, the girls then get blamed. The girls become the slags. The girls become the hoes. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, and it's that kind of behaviour that really we need to address.
Absolutely, and I suppose it's like, what sort of protective factors can we sort of put in place for our girls, to kind of limit the chances of these sort of things happening. So ultimately, I'm just thinking straight up, first and foremost, like, when you say about sex being used as power, well, I think we've got to consider about, there's a lot of nude shots being shared, and is being shared, and what sort of predicament that can place our kids with, because once they've got that, they don't want that exposed out there, so they're pretty much at their mercy. Do you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, then that's a form of control as well, like, do you know what I mean? And abuse, like, do you know what I mean? And it is a crime, like,
Yeah,
it's a crime, and especially for those, like, under 16, that's child pornography for those males that are walking around with these pictures. And I think it is about educating our boys as well, so that they know, like, you haven't got to be at a party with your friends, and because you know everybody's talking about having sex with this young girl that's passed out drunk on the bed. No, that's not okay. Like, do you know what I mean? We need to have those conversations with our boys. And what do you do if you receive a video of somebody who's underage? Because safeguarding will tell you that you've got a duty of care to report it. But how do we communicate that to our young people who are getting these videos, and make them aware of the trouble that they can get into should they pass that video on?
yeah,
Do you know
yeah.
what I mean? It's like it is
And
serious.
you know what? I think Liz was saying about educating our boys, being such a
Yeah,
crucial point.
yeah,
And do you know what? Like I says, as a father of five, for me, it's absolutely bang on. It's about the role modeling, how we role model this,
yeah.
how we But again, I'm also want to look at, again, the protective factors. What sort of things can we put in place to reduce the risk as parents?
To reduce the risk. I think like I said, open and honest conversations, and having real conversations about the music that they may listen to, or the programs that they watch. Like, I do it all the time. Like, if I hear my daughter listening to a certain song, or any of the kids, like, I put the song into Google to look at the lyrics, and then I'll just go and have that conversation. Like, do you think it's okay that this artist is talking about this woman in this way, or whatever not? And you know what I mean? 9 times out of 10, they say, yeah, they don't see nothing wrong with it. But then, when you break it down further to them and start asking them about how they see themselves, like, is it okay then for a man to refer to you as a bitch or a hoe? Like, do you know what I mean? No, you don't like it. Like, do you know what I mean? So you've got to kind of like look at what it is you're feeding your internal system with, as to what you will accept as well from others.
Absolutely. And do you know what? I think you're absolutely right. Using the forum of music or video or whatever sort of arts to be able to challenge that, because I know, for example, Top Boy was used for many parents to be able to engage in discussion with their kids, conversations that they probably never would have had, or would have struggled
Mm.
to have had, or would not have felt as necessary to have. Do you know what I mean? So you know, we got to look at it again from you know, beyond and a domestic abuse, and looking at like I said, the objectification of women now. Remember I sent you the link for that program, Black AF.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, oh
But
my
I watched the 2
days.
episodes.
Oh my
Yeah.
days. Let me tell you something. It brings up some issues. Yeah.
Mm.
And the way it brings up the issues, it brings it up with theory and understanding. And one of them, and when they were talking again about the adultification, because I know, for example, that there is a lot of there's a lot of stuff
Oh,
um around the like I said, of the adultification and of our girls, and with
mhm.
the apps that they're using again, with like TikTok and stuff like that. You know what I mean? It's the twerking, and the dancing. Do you know what I mean? So when we was looking at some of the two of the biggest influencers in youth culture right now, according to the gram, yeah,
Mhm.
is Tory Lanes and Swams,
Yeah.
yeah, and the videos are unflipping believable in terms of what they're seeing, and all the kids are aware of it. They were aware of it. These young,
Mm.
these, and you know what? In terms of the reach and impact it's having, those videos are reaching worldwide, and people from 7 different continents are tuning in to these artists and shaking themselves in their underwear, and it's
Mhm.
unbelievable. And they're not just using that; they're using different you know tools, and that they're putting down their throat, vibrators and stuff, and they're using other things like milk and oil and all different sorts of things
Mm.
just to do that. So that kind of gets me thinking, is, boy, after lockdown, really, yeah, how much damage is this really doing to our young people? How
Mm.
much damage is it really doing, in the sense that how does that leave our boys when they're watching that? What are they thinking? How much value do they have a woman? How much respect do they have for women? How do they view women really? Do you know what I mean? After seeing that, and again, remember,
Mhm.
I'm gonna throw in from a critical point again. Yeah, when we think about it, and what Black AF pointed out was, you know, yeah, in one way, our young girls should be able to express themselves, and from a feminist point of view, they should be able to express themselves. They should be able to wear what they stuff, and
Mhm.
they shouldn't have to be adultified, and objectified. But we have to keep it real about where we're living, and where we're living, and quite rightly, makes you saying the desensitization, because we're seeing it. It's not it's not.
Exactly.
You
Well,
know,
2 points I want to raise about that. Number one is the girls that are taking part in the videos,
go
yeah,
on.
the girls that are twerking, some of them are doing it by choice. They're grown adults. They've made a decision to join either the sex industry or the dance industry, and that's fine. My concern is, like, if I could speak to some of these women, is like, let's look at their childhood and let's look at what they've gone through in their life that has made them reach this point where they think either, I don't want to accuse anybody of not valuing themselves if they're doing
No,
that.
no,
Like I say, if you're adult, then that's your choice. But there's clear evidence that shows, especially girls who have been sexually abused as children, can start to display over sexualized behaviors. Do you know what I mean? And then there's more recent evidence that shows, like, older girls who may experience sexual violence or abuse within their relationships, then, coming out of these relationships, then abuse themselves further by having sex with lots of different people and kind of not caring about it, or prostituting themselves, going to dancing and stuff. Do you know what I mean? And then for the boys, like you said, about the boys and men that are watching it, number one, I'll be very concerned if any of my male friends are going to say they're tuning in to watch it every night, because it's kind of like, we don't know how old these women and girls are. on this ground. There's no safeguarding measures in place. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I'm pretty sure some of them are going to be underage. Do you know what I mean? Like, and we already discussed like the predators in the community, and then like you said, what is it doing to the psyche in terms of what they're being conditioned, and then how do they value women then coming out of that? Are these some of the reasons why some men and boys think it's okay to actually touch a female inappropriately without being invited?
Yep. And you know what? For me, again, it looks like to what you was talking about. Oh my days, what was the term? But in terms of looking at how body image and body dysmorphia, yeah. So when we're looking at how our girls may be viewing, whether they're airbrushed or not airbrushed on the gram, images, videos, whatever, and feeling insecure in themselves because they may not look like that. Do you know what I mean? And 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 the unrealisticness of sometimes how young men are looking for that sort of imagery. So you know what I mean. So our girls become more withdrawn and stuff because of the imagery that they're seeing and how it's impacting them. Because they may not feel worthy or do you get where I'm coming from, mate?
Yeah, of course, of course. And like, just putting that into context with the statistics, although like I said, like, statistics, it's not giving us a true reflection because these are only the people that report.
A bit like COVID-19. Sorry.
However, I think there's one set of research that suggests 59% of girls aged 13 to 21 had experienced some sort of sexual assault at school. Do you know what I mean? And it's hard to decipher exactly, what the context is behind their sexual assaults, because people have different ways of reporting things, but more interestingly, 22% of young girls aged 7 to 12 had experienced somebody making sexual jokes towards them. Do you know what I mean? And I thought, like, seven, it's just getting younger and younger. Like,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? Like, and then, like, you've got plenty more stories talking about the sexual assaults that take place just when you're changing lesson, like, like people groping you when you're just changing lesson, like, do you know what I mean? It's kind of like how many of those girls that go through those experiences at school, how many of those girls go on to live life without it having an impact on their mental health, without it having an impact on their physical health, or like, without it impacting what substances they choose to then, like, abuse, like, later on in life, or the over sexualized behavior. It'd be interesting, like, if there were some more longer studies on the impacts of, like, children, or black, focusing on black children and black girls in terms of, like, what their outcomes look like later on in life.
Absolutely.
Deep. It's
Absolutely.
deep.
Do you know what?
We promote and listen to artists.
You're looking at the comments, yeah?
Yeah, so Ibrahim says, as a community, we are hypocrites. We promote or listen to artists who promote sexualization. And I'm gonna say, yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I do
Yeah.
agree with that somewhat. But then again, it's like, about critically analyzing the music that is being listened to.
Yeah, because ultimately, let's face it, there is a market for it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And do you know what? Even the way mainstream radio is now, yeah. Before it used, you had to go to more the underground stations to hear certain types of content, but no, this is
Yeah.
mainstream. This is One Extra. This is Capital. This is Radio One, and they're playing everything, and that it riles me up because it gives a false representation of what we are and what our children are and what our young people are. Do you know what I mean? By the minority of artists who are providing that sort of content, it's presenting a false image of what our young people are. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So what does that mean now? Do our young men and our young ladies have to play up to that? Do they do you know what I mean? Do they have to work towards it? I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's hard. For me, I think I'm just at a place where I'm just trying to create some sort of balance. You know what I mean? So, you know, I'm not like taking everything all away. Like I said, I like to sit down with young people and like let's critique and listen to the music together and have conversations about it. However, I always say to them, what are you doing to balance this out? Like, do you know what I mean? Where is your balance? Where is your you time? Like, do you know, like when are we turning off the internet for a day and just having time with ourselves to write in our journals? Or when are we going to listen to some frequency meditative music, like, you know, when are we going to listen to gospel or salads? Like, you know, when are we going to have that relationship like with the Most High, with God, and spend that time? So yeah, for me it's more about just encouraging balance, because you know, I'm under no illusion that I'm not going to be able to change the world overnight, the same way we didn't get here overnight. Like, do you know what I mean? I think a few people in the comments have said, like, you know, this has been going on for years and now we're at this point. So for us to change it, it is going to take more than you know, one night or
Absolutely.
one day.
Absolutely. How you doing there? Are you comfortable? You all right?
Yeah, you know what, I was just thinking, because I've got a poem that is actually based on wait there. It is actually based on experiences of somebody who has experienced sexual assault or sexual abuse, rape, those kind of topics. And
Yeah.
it's just something that I've noticed, especially within my work, working with many girls who may have experienced certain things such as that. It's almost like we've got this unwritten understanding, you know, with each other,
Yes.
because it's like there are certain things. I think what I'm hearing from people is there are certain things that you can talk about to people. You can only talk about it to people that have kind of been through or experienced it. Do you know
Yes.
what I mean? And it's kind of like, you know, that's not obviously saying that they're the only people that can work with these people. But I think when it comes to, like, you know, that understanding and that empathy and that therapeutic care, I think that's something that I've recognised just in my own work.
Good. 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 Good.
Okay, so let's see what does everybody at home think? Would you like to hear this poem? Let's see if I can get it up. And it's one that I literally just wrote it at the beginning of March, and for me it's just about again giving people just giving people that step inside the world of, like, you know, what it feels like. So it's called How It Feels. I can't even explain it, it's just how it feels. If I try to explain it, you'll probably tell me it's not even real. I don't expect you to understand or even know how it feels if you are one of the lucky few to have never experienced this for real. The first time I was assaulted, it wasn't even by him. It was by one of his sworn enemies and took place before I was even 16. I never said anything to anyone, just cried myself to sleep every night. And when I plucked up the courage to tell my ex, it was my fault for not putting up a fight. Statistics currently tell us 59% of our young queens have been assaulted sexually or sexually harassed from the very young age of 16. And those are just the ones who report it, and I believe there are so many more. So are we going to continue to ignore it and ignore it some more? Those 59% of young girls should just get over it and ignore how it feels. They should ignore the feelings of dirtiness and shame and pretend that the incident wasn't real. Sorry. Don't know how to use my computer. Sorry. Okay. So they should ignore the feelings of dirtiness and shame and pretend that the incident wasn't real. They should stop with their emotions, stop saying how it feels, because no one really cares that it will take a lifetime or more to heal. They say she needs to fix herself up as it all happened so long ago. But can they stop the PTSD or anxiety? I think the answer is no. I can't even explain it. It's just how it feels. If I try to explain it, you will probably tell me it's not even real. I don't expect you to understand or even know how it feels. If you are one of the lucky few to have never experienced this for real. So who has a right to tell you how you should think or even feel? Who is the only person in this world who knows how it feels when it's real? Only you can know how it feels for you, because I know how it feels for me. It still hurts me just like yesterday, and I can never go back to being me. I am never the same Naomi, the ones that before the crimes took place. I can never be that Naomi because the memories haunt me every single day. From the anxiety to PTSD, panic attacks and more, they expect me to get over it, but for me, it will always be raw. I can't even explain it. It's just how it feels. If I try to explain it, you'll probably tell me it's not even real. I don't expect you to understand it or even know how it feels. If you are one of the lucky few to have never experienced this for real. So when you're sat at home wondering, I wonder how she feels, always remember, no matter when it took place, that incident was so real. That incident would have changed her, whether it happened once or many times more. It will take patience and time until she knows how it feels without it being raw. Do not ever silence her story and tell her she should talk about something else, because every single time she shares it, another disclosure comes about. Our children need to know the facts of life that made life ahead for them. And let's not forget the 1 in 7 that have been assaulted before they were 10. There is a clear indication that something is wrong, and I just don't want any more of our daughters or any more of our sons to know how it feels to be assaulted or abused, because nobody in this world can heal that type of bruise. I can't even explain it. It's just how it feels. If I try to explain it, you will probably tell me it's not even real. I don't expect you to understand or even know how it feels. If you are one of the lucky few to have never experienced this for real. There you go. And that's I think what I just want to leave it with, a little bit of poetry
Yeah.
on the topic. And yeah, just before I go, I just want to check in and just make sure everyone's all right. And just want to big up all the amazing organizations that are continuing to work with our women and survivors and victims of domestic abuse. And I want to make a special mention to obviously PODS, Protect Our Daughters and Sons, what we're doing.
Yeah.
The late John Campbell's program, Restoring Queens, with Community Vision West Midlands, Clancy, Simone, and now I've forgotten Joe's
Tanya.
older daughter's name. Yeah, Tanya.
Yeah.
Me. Yeah, but I just want to big up them for the work that they're doing, and also Females of Empowerment, who is now called Living Beyond Surviving, who joined the chat earlier on. She's been doing amazing work, and she's been doing it for quite a few years now, so keep it up. Strength of a Woman, Tanya Pinnock. I was able to join a live Zoom call with her and some other organisations from London the other day. She's doing amazing work with Islington Safeguarding Council, I think it is, against domestic abuse again. And then in Birmingham, I've got Rates Birmingham, who are a domestic abuse organisation, and Feed My Creative, Janet. I want to big up Janet for all the amazing work that she's done in terms of for refugees. So for those that don't know Janet, she actually runs like a textile organisation, and she's been making bags for refugees, weekend bags, and she's now making masks, surgical masks for you during this coronavirus lockdown, and all the proceeds or half the proceeds from that will be going to support Waits Birmingham. And then you know, want to say a massive thank you as well to Safe Lives. if you haven't checked out Safe Lives and their website, definitely check them out for you know, resources, statistics, and any help and advice that you might need. Like, you know, some of the work that we've been doing, a campaign that they're launching soon, is about us reaching into people rather than waiting for people to reach out. So I think, you know, the overall message of this chat, like, you know, we're talking about communities and what can we do, what can we do? And I think that's what we need to start doing, is stop standing on the sidelines, silent, and thinking it's nothing to do with you. Like, you know, reach into that person and find out if they need help. And, you know, I'm not just talking about victims or survivors, I'm talking about the perpetrators as well, because I've made it very clear that they need help to change their behavior if we are to stamp out this issue, because there's no point if we don't you know, if we don't help the perpetrators stop what they're doing, they're only going to move on and abuse somebody else anyway. So yeah, and obviously blessed, you don't know my family, the people, thank you for having me on the live today. It's been really good, really an eye-opener. And thank you everybody for tuning in and even coming back after the hour was up, because I think we thought it was only going to be about an hour,
innit?
Yeah, so you know, and I think Darren's gonna save the recordings because I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And yes, Natural Secret, yes, and our men need to step up. And you know, I'm grateful to see you know, more and more men now talking on this topic. Like I shared a video from Solve today from Craig Pinkney's organization, and there's he's put out a very clear message about domestic abuse and how we should be speaking, well, how men should be speaking on it as well. Yeah, so thank you, Darren.
Thank you very much for sharing your knowledge, your experience, and just, you know what I mean, this is what we do all the time on the phone, don't we? This is how
Yeah.
So for me, that was the second time I've heard that poem, and it was just as powerful, and it hit me exactly the same way. And you know, thank you for writing that. In terms of representation, in terms of us being seen in services, in terms of the invisibility of this issue within our community, I think that, you know, today has been excellent for addressing those issues. And, you know, for those who have missed it, may have missed all of the chat, we are looking to upload this on other platforms, so just look out and follow us. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, thank you very much.
All right then, thank you, Darren.
No worries, sis.
Thank you, everybody.
Look after you.
Oh, beautiful. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.